When historians explore the origins of the Second World War, they often return to its predecessor, the First World War, or the Great War of 1914 to 1918. This is no coincidence. The unresolved tensions of one global conflict would ultimately fuel the next. While Germany was defeated in 1918, it remained unreconciled. Some victorious powers, particularly Japan and Italy, had not fully realized their war objectives for which they fought on the side of the Entente. Moreover, not all nations fighting for independence succeeded, including Ukrainians. In the early 20th century, Ukraine as we know it today did not exist. The territory was divided between two imperial powers, Austria-Hungary and the Russian Empire. However, a robust Ukrainian national movement was already working to reunite the Ukrainian people. How did Ukrainian lands end up in different states? 4 centuries earlier, Ukrainians lived predominantly within the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, then the largest state in Eastern Europe. The Ukrainian Cossacks established their own state, the Zaporizhian Host, or Hetmanat. They fought for independence from the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. Muscovy Russia intervened in this struggle, progressively absorbing most Ukrainian territories. The western Ukrainian regions such as Galicia, Bukovina, and Transcarpathia became part of Austria and subsequently Austria-Hungary. Historian Andrew Wilson describes Ukrainians as an unexpected nation, suggesting minimal apparent preconditions for their emergence on the historical stage in the 20th century. Yet, these preconditions were overlooked. In reality, Ukrainians represented a nation with a distinctive culture, language, and centuries-old tradition of statehood. Unfortunately, the world long viewed Ukrainians merely as a branch of the Russian people, a perspective the Russian Empire actively propagated. During the First World War, Ukrainians were forced to fight against each other as subjects of two opposing states. Historians estimate that approximately 4 million Ukrainians were conscripted into the Imperial Russian Army, while over 500,000 fought for Austria-Hungary. At the beginning of the war in 1914, the Russian-Austrian front formed in Galicia and Bukovina. Later, this front divided Volhynia, another Ukrainian region. This fratricidal conflict was devastating for the Ukrainian people. More than 700,000 soldiers of Ukrainian descent perished on both sides, with civilian populations also suffering significant losses over the 2.5 years of fighting. At the same time, the Great War also presented an opportunity for the national movement to break free from imperial constraints. Ukrainians took advantage of this opportunity. In March 1917, the Russian Revolution marked a pivotal moment. The 300-year-old Romanov dynasty was overthrown and the monarchy was abolished. A new spirit of freedom swept through Kiev, which became the center of the Ukrainian national movement and would later serve as the new state's capital. Ukrainian parties established the Central Rada, initially Kiev-based political circle that evolved into a national representative body of all Ukrainians in Russia and ultimately a parliamentary institution for the independent republic. The revolution's impact fragmented the Imperial Russian army and navy. Millions of peasants and townspeople recruited for the war began forming nationality-based units, with Ukrainian regiments emerging. Blue and yellow flags were raised over Russian naval vessels. Historian Mikhailo Hrushevsky chaired the Central Rada. Writer Volodymyr Vinnichenko headed the first Ukrainian government. Publicist Simon Petlura spearheaded army development. These leaders embraced democratic and socialist principles, seeking peaceful relations with all nations. The Ukrainian parliament and government included representatives of Russian, Jewish, and Polish political parties and other national minorities. On November 20th, 1917, shortly after the Bolshevik coup in Petrograd, the Central Rada proclaimed the Ukrainian People's Republic, the UPR. At this point, Ukraine had already established its own armed forces and local administration, taking initial steps towards international recognition. However, Lenin's government merely paid lip service to the right of peoples to self-determination. Without hesitation, the Bolsheviks initiated the first Russian-Ukrainian war of the 20th century. They captured key Ukrainian cities like Kharkiv, Chernihiv, and Poltava. In response to these actions, on January 22, 1918, the Central Rada broke ties with Russia and declared the independence of the Ukrainian People's Republic. While Bolshevik forces advanced into Ukraine from the east, the First World War's Eastern Front remained active in the west. On February 9, 1918, the UPR delegation signed the first peace agreement of the Great War in Brest-Litovsk with Germany, Austria-Hungary, the Ottoman Empire, and Bulgaria. This move eliminated an additional threat, secured diplomatic recognition, and established allies against the Russian Bolsheviks. Ukraine's relationship with Berlin was contradictory. The Germans initially helped liberate the country from Bolshevik control and provided stability and border protection. Simultaneously, they actively and sometimes brutally interfered in Ukraine's internal affairs and hindered the development of the Ukrainian military. In autumn 1918, Germany and its allies surrendered and withdrew from Ukraine. The Austro-Hungarian Empire collapsed. Ukrainians in Galicia and Bukovina seized this moment to proclaim the Western Ukrainian People's Republic, the WUPR. On January 22, 1919, the UPR and WUPR united into a single state. From this point, the UPR found itself in continuous conflict with almost all of its neighbors, particularly Poland and the Russian Bolsheviks. Ukraine remained in international isolation after the Entente's victory in the First World War. The Western powers not only failed to support Ukrainians in resisting the Bolshevik invasion, but actively supported the UPR's rivals, primarily Poland and the Russian anti-Bolsheviks. Additionally, they backed Romania and Czechoslovakia, which, while not directly engaging in conflict with Ukraine, nonetheless occupied Ukrainian territories. By the end of 1921, the war for the independence of the Ukrainian People's Republic ended in defeat. However, this defeat did not resolve the question of Ukrainian independence. Ukrainians were ready to continue the fight in new conditions.